In this video, I will be answering the 10 most common APA referencing questions. Often students will ask if you can abbreviate a long corporate author, such as the Department of Children and Youth Affairs, to DCYA in your in-text citations, especially if you have multiple in-text citations for the same reference. Unfortunately, you must write it out fully every time. However, you can abbreviate it in the body of your essay. Sometimes it's not clear whether to use the word and or an ampersand symbol in your reference list or in your in-text citations. For your full references and your in-text citations, you would always use an ampersand. This is true for references with 2 authors or more than 2. For in-text citations with 3 or more authors, include only the first surname and et al. For all in-text citations. It's important to follow the correct rules for capitalization in references. The author's surname and initials should be capitalized, the names of journals should be capitalized, but article and book titles should be in sentence case, except for proper nouns, for example, a person's name. In APA 7, you don't need to list the date you retrieved a journal article. This is different to APA 6. However, you do need to include a retrieval date when the reference is a website, not a document or a PDF downloaded from a website, but the actual web page itself. You would list it as retrieved month, day, year. One of the most common questions asked is, how do I reference something that is referenced by another author in a book? How do I quote a quote? This is called an indirect citation. But you should remember that where possible, you should read the original source for yourself. If you're having trouble finding the original source, contact the library and we'll be able to help you. If you cannot read the original source for yourself, then you can reference it using an indirect citation. There are 2 parts to this. 1, include as cited in your in-text citation. And then in the reference list, you only list the source that you actually read. For example, if you read a book by Agrios and she quoted an article by Miller, but you haven't read Miller's article, your full reference would just be for the Agrios book. However, your in-text citation would include both Miller and Agrios. References to websites are increasingly common. However, it's very important to remember that if you download a PDF document from a website, you're not referencing the website, you're referencing the document. Don't follow website rules for documents or reports that you have downloaded. If you are referencing a website, you need the name of the organization or the name of the website, the date of the web page. If there's no date, put ND where you would put the date. Then the title of the page in italics. Then you list the retrieval date, which is when you opened the page, as month, day, year, and then from the URL of the page. In education, you often reference government reports with no person's name as the author listed. If there are no individual names as the author, you use the name of the organisation in place of the author. If there is no secondary organisation listed as the publisher, you just leave out that part of the reference. If the report has a number, include it in the reference, but remember that not all reports have numbers. Here's an example of a government report with a corporate author, the Department of Education and Skills, and no particular publisher, so we've left out that part of the reference. That's okay in APA 7. Your in-text citation lists the corporate author, which is the Department of Education and Skills. You will likely use reports written by other organisations too, such as the NCCA. Take the same approach to these reports. Here we can see that the author is the National Council for Curriculum and Assessment, NCCA, and the title is ASHTR, the Early Childhood Curriculum Framework. Remember, you can't abbreviate NCCA in your in-text or full reference. Sometimes you'll want to reference a piece of legislation, such as the Disability Act or the Education Act. Each piece of legislation should be referenced separately, but you don't need to have separate references for individual parts or sections of the Act. You should include the permanent URL for the relevant Act. The permanent URL can be found on the Irish Statute Book website. References for legislation are actually very simple in APA. You just need the name of the Act, the year it was from, and the link to the Irish Statute Book permanent URL. Your in-text citation just needs the name of the Act and the year. Learning to format your references can take time. You can see a sample reference list on the APA Library Guide. Your reference list should be titled as simply References with the word centred. Don't title this section Bibliography. Your reference list must be in alphabetical order by the first word of the reference, which is usually the author's surname. You cannot include anything in your references that you haven't cited in your essay. You only need to include one reference per resource, even if you cited it multiple times. You need to use a left-hanging indent. Here's what that looks like. You use the Tab key to indent from the left, or you can use the indent button on Word. Your reference list should be double-spaced, and don't skip a line between each reference. Don't number your references or put them as bullet points. And be careful to use italics correctly. The rules for italics are specific to each type of reference, for example, journal articles, books, etc. You can see this sample reference list on the APA Library Guide. To get more help with APA referencing, contact the library. You can also visit our APA Library Guide online and download the handout.